So yesterday I talked about this insane football sacrifice film, Him, a very deeply esoteric film, and I'll show you some more imagery from it later, but I'm still going to be on the topic since the Super Bowl is coming up. And of course, I also talked about the Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode Him, which correlates to the film and is centered around Michelle Trachtenberg's character Dawn developing a crush on a football star. And before I move on to today's topic, a user mentioned Greek gematria to me, and it got me curious. So I took a look at Michelle Trachtenberg's name in Greek gematria, and wouldn't you know that it equals 2226. That is our 222 order out of chaos, as above so below number, combined with Michelle Trachtenberg's death date, 226. What are the odds of that? It never fails to line up with Trachtenberg, I tell you. But anyway, I wanted to talk a little about Phil Alden Robinson. Of course, he has the son in the name. A film director, as he directed The SCUM of All Fears, in which a nuclear explosion takes place at a football game. In fact, Robinson actually directed some pretty other interesting films, or at least films that have interesting release dates, as Sneakers, which, as an avid movie store connoisseur during the 90s, growing up, I saw the cover for countless times, but the movie never interested me, so I have not seen it. But it released on September 11th, 1992. And he also directed Field of Dreams, which, by the way, stars Amy Madigan, who was born on 9/11 and played the witch Gladys Lilly in the 88 Lionsgate Portal date released Weapons, where the big number is 217. In fact, Gabby Hoffman from Uncle Buck is in the film as well. And remember, Amy Madigan played Uncle Buck's girlfriend. And take a look at the Field of Dreams release date, April 21st, 1989. April 21st is, of course, the Seattle Space Needle's opening date. And 1989, by the way, is the same year they did the Seattle Space Needle April Fool's Day prank, just 20 days before this film's release. And right off the bat, I want to take a quick look at Amy Madigan's character name, since in Weapons, her Gladys Lilly was a perfect cipher match to Donald Trump. And right off the bat, with the name Annie Kinsella, we have our 126. Which of course relates to sports by being Kobe Bryant's death date, but it also relates to Trump because the 126 composite number is 165, and Donald Trump was born on the 165th day of the year. So once again, we have Amy Madigan's character connecting to Donald Trump. And 290 is the 228th composite. You know who died on the 228th day of the year? Elvis. The 81st composite is 111. The 40th composite is 57. Michelle Trachtenberg died on the 57th day of the year. Seattle Slew died on 5/7, the 127th day of the year. And 40 is the 27th composite. 27th day of the year is 127. 54th composite is 76. George Bush Jr., the 9/11 president, born on 7/6. Remember that Amy Madigan was born on 9/11. And by the way, the character's initials, AK, equals 111. And if you just go with the last name Kinsella in Latin, again, the hardest cipher to find matches, we get our 195. On a leap year, the 195th day of the year is 7/13. Trump's ear clip date, Shannon Doherty's death date, and when she died, when Trump got his ear clip, it was a leap year, 2024. So more connections to Trump. But the big thing I wanted to talk about was Phil Alden Robinson's age. By the way, don't forget that the supposed assassin of Charlie Kirk was Tyler Robinson. But anyway, Phil Alden Robinson, born on March 1st, 1950, the director of a film where there is a nuclear explosion during a football game. From his birth to this year's Super Bowl at Levi's Stadium, 9/11 months, 7 days. So of course, thought that was pretty interesting. And I also can see it like this is your 9/11. And of course, the 11 is the 2 twin towers, and the 7 signifies Building 7. So 9/11 with your buildings 1, 2, and 7. And that would mean he was exactly 9/11 months old on the 1st of February. And what I find interesting about that is that in the amount of days, it has your big 137 number, and that 1 plus 3 plus 7 is 11, and 2 plus 7 is 9, 9/11. So we got our 9/11 twice here. And of course, 75 plus 11 is your 86, like they 86 the towers. And by the way, it also reminds me something else I forgot to mention in yesterday's video. Sam Darnold of the Seahawks, born on June 5th, 1997. June is the 156th day of the year. Remember that the 156th prime number is 9/11, and that 156 itself is the 119th composite, your backwards 9/11. So Darnold, born on the 156th day of the year, which connects to 9/11. And I'm not saying this means there's going to be some kind of 9/11 style event at the Super Bowl or anything like that. I'm just showing you that this Super Bowl is very heavily coded. And again, they have to connect everything to everything. It doesn't mean that an event is imminent. Of course, the director of this film would be 9/11 months old in his 9/11th month for the Levi's Stadium Super Bowl, with twin Elvis connections via the Seahawks and the Patriots. The Sum of All Fears, by the way, is 124 minutes long. Not only is that your backwards 421, but remember that the 124th composite number is 162, your 6/11 number, the 162nd day of the year. Right here it says that Ryan, the main character is Jack Ryan. Ryan and his colleagues discerned that a crate from the Ukraine facility was flown to the Canary Islands, then sent to Baltimore on a cargo ship. Ryan warns Cabot, played by Morgan Freeman, by the way, who I believe is from Memphis, who is attending a football game in the city with U.S. President Robert Fowler. That, of course, is the football game where the nuke goes off. Cabot winds up dying. The president, however, does not. As it's listed there, U.S. President Robert Fowler in Gematria gives us some pretty interesting numbers. Reverse Satanic gives us our backwards 9/11/01. Of course, 2 times 111 would be our 222. And of course, in Latin, 2061, which is basically our backwards 162, 6/11 numbers. Anytime you see the 1, 2, 7 numbers together, it's important. 1884. So you're 18, you're 88, and you're 84 all together. And again, I'm not going to point out every number. If you know the numbers by now, you should know what numbers matter and what numbers don't. Take away the U.S. and just have it be President Robert Fowler. We have our 162, 6/11 numbers still. 1800, 18. 1002 can be your 10-2 Donnie Darko prophecy date made by Frank the Rabbit. 90 in Chaldean, and what did I tell you, was the 121st day of the year, May Day, the day of pagan sacrifice. And of course, 120 is when Trump was inaugurated last year. The 37th prime number, the 19th prime number, the 39th prime number. Remember, Michelle died at 39, and how 39 is the 26th composite, all the 26 codes surrounding Michelle pointing to this year. Of course, that's your 67. 68 is the 48th composite. Remember, the 48th prime number is 223, your backwards 322, and 48 itself is your backwards 84. Just like that's your backwards 86. And we have our 10-2 Donnie Darko date yet again. The 587th composite is 715. Remember, True Lies, You're Fired, The Nuclear Terrorists, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sam Darnold, released on 715. The lead character in Him, can't remember his name, but he played Cameron Cade, born on 715. Just first name Robert gives us plenty of interesting numbers. Remember, 288 is the 226th composite number. Michelle Trachtenberg died on 226. Levi Strauss, who Levi's Stadium is named after, was born on 226. The original World Trade Center bombing was on 226. Our 33, our 84, our 39, our 317, which of course is our backwards 713, our big 137 numbers. Kurt Russell, who was in At the World's Fair with Elvis, born on 317. The first Final Destination film released on 317 in the year 2000, all about Flight 180. And last name Fowler. Trump is currently 79. You have your 1061, basically your 611 or upside down 911 numbers. Never forget that the 31st prime number is 127. And that the 29th prime is your 10-9, Yale Skull and Bones founding day, also the 29th composite 44 kill number. 691 is the 125th prime. Remember, the 125th day of the year is 55, the Satan number. But what about the director himself? The guy who will be 9/11 months, 7 days old when the Super Bowl rolls around. Phil Alden Robinson gives us our 11/22 JFK assassination date, our 88 Trump portal infinity number, our 528, which is not only my birth date, but also fictional character Donnie Darko's birth date. 88 is also the 64th composite number, and the Seattle Space Needle will be 64 this year. And the 88th composite is 119, your backwards 911. 92 is the 67th composite, and the 92nd composite is 123, which is a murder code. Of course, we have our 67 in Chaldean. 628, by the way, is an Elon Musk birth date. But what about that ordinal 187? If you add up the divisors, the sum is 216, your 84 number. Ironic, right? The sum of all fears. It's also the 144th composite. Remember how big the 144 number is? I showed you in a previous video how many things it adds up to. It's also the 109th composite, your 10-9 Yale Skull and Bones founding date. So the sum of all fears, 181 is the 42nd prime number. The Seattle Space Needle turns 64 this year. I'll get back to that. 251 is the 54th prime. 89 is the 24th prime number. And the 89th composite is 120. Remember, Trump inaugurated on 120. Don't forget Epstein, also born on 120. 982 is the 816th composite. Who died on 816? Elvis. You have your 712 here, which of course is your 12, 7, 127, 217 numbers. Remember, Kelly Preston died on 712, and supposedly so did Benjamin Keogh. 68 again, 811, 8 times 11, your 88 Trump Infinity Portal number. I wanted to take a real quick look at the 1506 because the prime number is 12611. That's a Kobe Bryant death date combined with the 611. Sort of interesting, yes. And up here we have your 1266, Kobe Bryant death date with the 66 twin number. And of course I saved this one for last. our 1086 beast system number. Or more accurately, the beast system number. As you can see, 1086, same cipher. By the way, the Sum of All Fears premiered in LA on May 29th, 2002. That, of course, is JFK's birthday. And then it went to wide release on the 31st of May. So if we go from Phil Alden Robinson's birth to the premiere of The Sum of All Fears is 19,082 days. 19 plus 82 is 101. And 101 is the 26th prime number, pointing to the year 2026. But perhaps even more interesting than that is that the 19th prime number is 67, and the 82nd prime number is 421. So you have your 67 Elvis Jesse Water number and your 421 Seattle Space Needle opening date in both of these numbers here with the primes. And speaking of the 82nd prime number being 421, 52 plus 2 plus 28 equals 82. So there you have your 421 again. And this is also your 522 with your 228. Remember, Memphis was founded on 522. The Gift Tower Sacrifice episode of Buffy aired on 522. And Elvis died on the 228th day of the year. All to the sum of 82. And the 82nd prime is 421. And by the way, that means if we go to the wide release of Sum of All Fears from his birth is 1984 days. You know all about 1984. That's my birth year. Anyone who was born in 84 turns 42 this year. And, of course, you know all about the 1984 Orwell story about the future. And this 522 Memphis founding date again, and 52 plus 2 plus 30 is also 84. In fact, in the percentage of a common year, you have your 522 Memphis founding date, your 228th day of the year, Elvis death date with a 49, and Levi's Stadium is the home of the 49ers. I also wanted to point out real quick that in The Sum of All Fears, the nuke is in Baltimore, and Baltimore gives us our 888 beast system number. And by the way, whenever I speak of the beast system numbers, I know that a lot of different numbers equal beast system, as you can see here, but I generally mention the ones that you find in these three ciphers, because these three ciphers are the ones where they love to code the beast system. They're doing it constantly. Also, getting back to Field of Dreams for a minute, the film is adapted from a book called Shoeless Joe. Now, who was asking for his shoes during his ear clip? Donald Trump. And Shoeless Joe gives us our 165. Remember, Trump born on the 165th day of the year. Also, your 47, Trump the 45, 47 president, your 42. 517 is the 137th day of the year, which is when Shannon last appeared on Charmed in Season 3, Episode 22. And remember, 137 is the reason Trump got his ear clip on 7/13, while Shannon died on 7/13. And if we add the character's last name, Jackson, we get our 911. Also, the 205th composite is 261, your backwards 162, 611 number. 18th prime, 26th prime. The author of the book, by the way, gives us our 888 beast system number. And another reason I use the 888, the 1086, and also the 198, which equals beast, and also equals President Trump, is because the difference between 888 and 1086 is 198. So those numbers all connect to each other. And getting back to Robinson for a minute, let's take a look at his parents' names. He is the son of Jesse Robinson, spelled the way that Elvis's twin brother Jesse's name is spelled on his gravestone, and the late S. Jesse Robinson. So both of his parents' names were Jesse, spelled differently though. It also says he appeared on the Today Show concert as a guitarist with his then girlfriend Carole King. King in the name. And wouldn't you know, she was born February 9th, 1942. So her birthday will be the day after the Super Bowl. And how interesting that going from her date of birth to the Super Bowl is 83 years, 11 months, and 30 days, which means the day after the Super Bowl will be her 84-year birthday. 83 plus 11 plus 30 is also 124. And again, the 124th composite is your 162611 number. She is currently in her 1007th month of life, and 1007 plus 30 is 1037, or your big 137 number. And 6 plus 8 is 14, 314, your pi date number. Which reminds me, since you know how Michelle Trachtenberg connects to Pi Day, that February 8th, the day of the Super Bowl, is the 39th day of the year. And again, Michelle died at the age of 39. And that 39 is the 26th composite number. So yeah, going back to Carole King, go to her birth date this year. Again, exactly 84 years, 1008 months. Fitting for the last name King, 1-8. And real quick, something I forgot to mention about Robinson's age. Of course, 9/11 plus 7 would be 9/18. And here in the days, 2 plus 7 is 9. 7 plus 3 plus 8 is 18. So this also would be 9/18, strangely enough. James Cromwell plays the president in The Sum of All Fears. Of course, he's got the JC initials, and he was born on January 27th. That's your 127, 12-7 numbers. I like Cromwell. He's a known vegan and animal activist, so I really have nothing against him. But just because I like him doesn't mean that, he can't be in movies that have programming. That said, I will always support animal rights, like I said in my video about Brigitte Bardot. So again, nothing against the actor, but I do find it interesting that in Gematria, his name equals 149, and the 149th day of the year is JFK's birthday, and in The Sum of All Fears, he was nearly killed in a nuclear explosion at a football game. So just like Michelle Trachtenberg and Shannon Doherty, both of whom were chosen at young ages, James Cromwell was chosen for a reason to play the president in this film. And speaking of assassinations, this 1212 in reverse Sumerian is the 1014th composite, and Charlie Kirk was born on 1014. And we also have the 1834 in Latin, which is important because its composite is 2160, or your 21684 number. And of course, we also have our 47 here, Trump the 45, 47 president. Remember that the 47th composite is 66, the twin number, and we have our 76, George Bush Jr. birth date. And with just last name Cromwell, remember 115 is the 84th composite, 101 is the 26th prime number, the 38th prime is 163, the 163rd day of the year, of course, is 6/12, George Bush Sr.'s birth date, you're backwards 216, and the 38th composite is 55, the Satan number, The 43rd prime number is 191, your 911 numbers, and 395 is the 317th composite. We have our 33 here, and remember that the 33rd prime is your 137. Using just his first name, James, we can't get away from this number, can we? 156. Remember, the 156 prime is 911, and 156 itself is your backwards 911 via the composite. We also can't get away from our 522 Memphis founding date, Tower Sacrifice episode, The Gift air date. And remember that 288 is the 226th composite number. Again, Michelle died on 226. Levi Strauss born on 226. The 262nd day of the year is September 19th, when the movie Him came out last year, which I just did a video on and which I talked about at the start of this video. I do believe Sam Darnold is number 14 for the Seahawks, is he not? And he was born on the 156th day of the year, June 5th. We also have our 48, and the 48th prime number is 223. Your backwards 322, our 33. And remember, are all the Jameses in the news with the Charles James Kirk event last year? I do find it interesting that if you go from James's birth date, since it is on the 127-12-7 date, to 9/11/2001 and include the end date, is 22,509 days. That has your 522 Memphis founding date, Tower Sacrifice air date in there. But 509 plus 22 is 531, and the SCUM of All Fears went into wide release on 5/31/2002. Also 61 years, 7 months, 16 days. That's the same both forwards and backwards. And 61 plus 7 plus 16 is 84. And 739 plus 16 is 755, which is the 621st composite number. That's your 216, 162 numbers rearranged. Also interesting to note that the 755th composite is 912. Anthony Perkins, whose wife, Barry Berenson, was supposedly on one of the supposed planes that crashed into the towers on that day. He died on 9/12/1992, and then she went and died on 9/11. How very believable, right? And one of their sons is named Elvis, the other Osgood. He has the Oz in the name, like the Emerald City. Heck, now that I think about it, he has the good in the name too, like the whole Renee Good psyop. And James was born 680 days before the actual Pearl Harbor event. Worth noting that the divisors of 680 sum up to 1620, which is basically your 162, 611 numbers. And it's also the 556 composite. And the 556 prime number is 4021. Basically your 421 Seattle Space Needle opening date. Also 1 year, 10 months, 10 days, which can be your 111. Remember, 9/11 leaves 111 days remaining in the year, and the Seattle Space Needle opened on the 111th day of the year, and can also be your 110 twice. Now, of course, the SCUM of All Fears also was based on a book like Field of Dreams was by Tom Clancy, who died October 1st, 2013. And when you know, he was actually born on Shannon Doherty's birth date, April 12th, the 102nd day of the year. And how interesting that Clancy was born 8,766 days before Shannon was. You have your 66 twin number in there, your 76 and your backwards 67. 87 plus 66 is 153. And wouldn't you know that 153 is the 116th composite number, your backwards 611. And aside from Clancy having the same birthday as Shannon, you know he connects to her because his name equals 137. And why did Shannon die on 7/13? Because of the 137, the 33rd prime. And remember that her last date on Charmed was on 5/17, the 137th day of the year, Season 3, Episode 22, titled All Hell Breaks Loose. Interesting to note that Clancy's name also equals 421 in Satanic. We have our 822 Irina Zarutska death date, which is our backwards 228. Elvis died on the 228th day of the year, our 47. Worth noting, the 106 in ordinal and the divisors sum up to your 162. And remember earlier when I said never forget that the 31st prime is 127, and that the 29th prime is your 10-9 Yell Skull and Bones founding date? Again, that's because the Sum of All Fears released on both the 29th and the 31st. And even if you use his full name, Thomas Leo Clancy Jr., he still connects to Shannon because 7/13 is the 194th day of the year on a normal year. Of course, when she actually died, it was the 195th day of the year, but 7/13 is still the 194th day of the year on normal years, so it still connects regardless. Clancy was also born 24 years before Shannon. 24 is the 14th composite. Sam Darnold is number 14, remember? And he was born 288 months before she was. And remember that 288 can be 216 because 8 plus 8 is 16. And of course, remember, as I've said numerous times now, 288 is the 226th composite. Michelle Trachtenberg's death date. Remember, she died 7 months, 13 days after Shannon died on 7/13. And Levi Strauss, of course, born on 226. Over here in the weeks and days, 1252 plus 2 would be 1254. Drop the 1. The 254th day of the year is 9/11. And with the 8766 days between their birth dates, get a load of this. 8 times 7 times 6 times 6 is 2016, or your 21684. Never forget Shannon Doherty from Memphis. Born on 4/12, which of course is like the mirror of 4/21, the Space Needle's opening date. And interesting to note that if you include the end date, 8767, 876 plus 7 is 883, which is interesting for two reasons, because the 883rd composite number is 1062, which is basically your 162611. And remember, I just showed you that 87 plus 66 equals 153. 883 is the 153rd prime. And remember, 153 is the 116th composite, your backwards 611. So two 611 connections with 883. And those connections between Clancy and Shannon are definitely worth exploring further, but I'll do that in another video. Now I want to look a little at the Sum of All Fears book that the film is based on. The book is 798 pages long. Check out the 798th prime number, 6121. That's your 6/12 George Bush Sr. birth date combined with 121. The 121st day of the year is May Day, the day of pagan sacrifice. And of course, the 6/12 can also be your backwards 216. And the book was published on August 14th, 1991. Remember that August 14th is the 226th day of the year. Michelle Trachtenberg died on 226, and you know the rest about 226. Though it is interesting that Levi Strauss born on 226, and this book about a nuke going off in a football stadium was released on the 226th day of the year, and they're in Levi's Stadium this year. Now in the book, the plan is to detonate the weapon at the Super Bowl in Denver. So it's the Super Bowl, and it's in Denver. I don't believe it was the Super Bowl in the movie. I think it was just a football game. I can't remember because I haven't seen the movie since it came out. Super Bowl in Denver, 222. Now, in the book, the villains get help from someone named Manfred Fromm to build the bomb. Equals R126. Remember that the 126 composite is 165. Trump born on the 165th day of the year. 198, our beast number, which also equals President Trump. The 63 is the 44th composite, your 44 kill number. As you can see here, President Trump, 198. It says Fromm is a disaffected East German nuclear physicist who agrees to the plot. And it says that thinking that his work on the bomb is complete, they kill Fromm. However, Fromm had not yet told them that the tritium for the booster still needed to be filtered before use to eliminate accumulated helium-3. They assemble the bomb for use, but when detonated, the impure booster material causes only a low-yield fizzle to occur. Even with the low yield, the bomb still destroys the Super Bowl venue, killing nearly everyone there, including the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, and the commander of NORAD. And by the way, look what low yield equals. Your 42, your 111, your 666, your 39. Again, remember all the Michelle Trachtenberg 26 codes, and that she died at the age of 39. 39 is the 26th composite. 105 is the 77th composite. Fizzle, 84, 39, 165, 288, which of course relates to 226. 31, 127, prime number. And yeah, the villains are totally different in the book than they are in the movie. When they are captured and interrogated by Clark in Mexico City, they implicate the Iranian Ayatollah. Okay, so this is pretty interesting. From the book's release date to the Super Bowl this year, 34 years, 5 months, 25 days. Of course, we know now that Tom Clancy connects to Shannon Doherty, and Shannon Doherty's last date on 90210 was May 25th, 1994. The 34 comes before 525, so we would subtract it. And wouldn't you know that 34 days before May 25th is April 21st, the Seattle Space Needle's opening date? Again, you have to know how to do these calculations. They can be complicated. And there are many varying ways to go about it, not just a few. And how crazy is it then that 34 plus 5 plus 25 equals 64, and the Seattle Space Needle turns 64 on 4/21 this year? And remember, way earlier in this video, I told you I'd get back to the 64 because it is a loaded number. It is the 8th square and the 4th cube, giving you an 8-4 connection. The divisors sum to 127 is the 45th composite, and the 64th composite is 88. And the 64th prime is 311. 3 times 11, you're 33. So all around an absolutely loaded number, and that's how old the Space Needle turns this year. And from the release of the book to the Super Bowl is also 12,597 days. 1 plus 2 is 3. 5 plus 9 plus 7 is 21. 321, which is important because 321 is the 254th composite number, and the 254th day of the year is 9/11. And remember that Alcatraz closed on 321. You know how that connects to 6/11. And that, of course, means if I include the end date, this would add up to 322, Skull and Bones. And there are a lot more big connections with the SCUM of All Fears book and the movie too, as I've been looking through this, but it's just way too much to mention in one video, so I'll leave the SCUM of All Fears stuff there. Getting back to Field of Dreams for a minute, I do find it interesting that it's about building a baseball field out of a cornfield. And remember that 6/11 is National Corn on the Cob Day. You've got that big moon, or corona imagery behind him there. If we go from its release date to the Seattle Space Needle's birthday this year, 13 plus 514 is 527. The Golden Gate Bridge's birthday. The Super Bowl is in the San Francisco area, Santa Clara. 37 years, our EL number. 444 months, our big 444 number, which by the way is half of 888. Well, remember the author of the book whose name equals 888? He also has a 525 connection, as he was born on May 25th, 1935. And as Shannon Doherty, who was from Memphis and died on 7/13, last appeared on Charmed on the 137th day of the year, and she last appeared on 90210 on 5/25 in the year 94, going from Elvis's birth date to the author of the Field of Dreams book's birth date is a total of 137 days. And I might have covered that in my Shannon video, but there's so much info there with her that I don't remember 100% if I did or not, but I probably did. But of course, Elvis and the author of the book, born in the same year, so from his birth date to his birth date, and from his birth date to Shannon's last appearance on 90210 in the same year would be 137 days. Crazy, huh? And also 19 weeks, 4 days. Remember, on a normal year, the 194th day of the year is 7/13, but on a leap year, and this would be 195 if I include the end date, is the 195th day of the year. And don't forget that Shannon left 90210 in 1994. And since we have such interesting numbers there, going from the author Kinsella's birthday to Elvis's death date, 15,424 days, you're 42 forwards and backwards. 5 plus 1 is 6, 4 plus 4 plus 2 is 10, that could be your 610, which means that if you include the end date, it would add up to 611. 42 years, 2 months, 22 days, he died at 42. Washington is the 42nd state. 4-2 is 162 days before 9/11. That's your 42 with your 222 order out of chaos as above so below number. Include the end date, that becomes a backwards 322 with your 42. And 506 plus 22 is 528, my birth date. Also fictional character Donnie Darko's birth date. And remember those 1002 connections in the gematria earlier. 10-2, Frank the Rabbit's prophecy date. Well, that connects to the stupid Bad Bunny guy. I simply forgot to mention it at the time, mainly because I try to not think about that guy as much as possible. In 2,203 weeks and 3 days, that's your 33 with your backwards 322. So all around interesting numbers. And remember, the movie adapted from his book, released on 4/21, The Space Needle, opening date in the year 89, 20 days after the April Fool's Space Needle prank. And who played the title character from the book? Ray Liotta. He died May 26th, 2022. Now I want you to take a look at how deep the numbers go here, because of course the star of that movie is Kevin Costner. And if you go from his birth date on 1/18/55 to Liotta's death date, is 24,600 days. The 24th prime number is 89. The 600th prime number is 4409. Add them up, get 4498. And 4 plus 9 plus 8 is 21. So again, this would be your 4/21 Space Needle opening date. And that's the date the movie opened on. Also 67 years, 4 months, 8 days. That of course is your 48 or 84 with your 6776 number. 808 months, 8 days. Your 888 beast system number. Also 808 plus 8 is 816. Elvis died on 816. And also interesting to note that Costner will be a total of 26,026 days old when the Space Needle turns 64 this year. Twin 26s in the year 2026. And of course, 2 plus 6 is 8. 2 plus 6 is 8. Your 88 portal Trump infinity number. 71 years, 3 months, 3 days. 71 plus 3 is your 77. And by the way, since Leota played this shoeless one, going from his death date to when Trump was asking for his shoes, 779 days, you're 77 with your current 79 Trump age. And of course, Trump was 78 at the time, which of course is between 77 and 79. Here you basically have your 217 weapons number, your 12-7, 127. 2 times 1 would just be 2, so you can do the 217. 25 plus 17 is your 42. But most notably, a total of 111 weeks and 2 days. Leota's in the film released on the Seattle Space Needle's birthday, the 111th day of the year. 2 times 111 gives you your 222 Order Out of Chaos, as above, so below number. And how interesting then to find out that Trump was a total of 911 months and 12 days old when Leota died. I didn't know that one before looking this up. Of course, it can also be just your 9/11 and your 9/12 dates. Remember, Perkins died on 9/12 and how he connects to 9/11 via his wife. Also, 2 plus 7 is 9, 7 plus 4 is 11, and that's another 9/11. Not to mention 27 plus 740 is 767. So you have your 7-6 forwards and backwards, and your 6-7 forwards and backwards. And even here over in the percentage of a common year, you have a perfect 7,600.00%. Of course, George Bush Jr., the 9/11 president, born on 7/6. And again, you know this film connects just because of the release date, the fact that she's in it, born on 9/11, and her character Gladys Lilly in the 8/8 Portal Date film Weapons, a perfect cipher matcher to Donald Trump. And of course, the director. Also worth noting that the movie is 1 hour 42 minutes long, and remember that the 142nd day of the year is 5/22, Memphis' founding date, the Tower Sacrifice episode, The Gifts air date. And speaking of that 5/22 date, I know I said I was done with the SCUM of All Fears, but I had to include this, going from its premiere date to the Super Bowl date. 86, 56 days. 86 plus 56 is 142. And again, the 142nd day of the year, 5/22. And don't forget him, which I talked about in my last video, and which I talked about very briefly at the start of this video, which seems like an eternity ago, I know. It came out 142 days exactly before the Super Bowl. 4 months, 20 days. Include the end date, 4 months, 21 days for your 421. All about sacrifice rituals surrounding sports. But anyway, I think I've gone on long enough, but there is a ton to talk about with all this, so all glory to God, and thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.